Hello, and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerd Steve, and today I'm joined by this nerd. Good, good. And tonight's topic is D&D Ideas or recaps. Now, there are several ways we can look at recaps and how to use them in your D&D game or your TTRPG games. But really, it's just an excuse for us to talk about the games that we just ran at D&D in the Castle. That was a lot of fun. We're going to recap that a little bit, but we're also going to talk about how you can use a recap as tools in your games. Um, Actually, I feel like a moron because I didn't realize a particular thing about how recaps kind of work, at least in like television. So I'll throw it out there just in case, just like me, someone else didn't know. Um, when we start talking about the different types of recaps. Sure. So there's two different types. There's two different types of ways I would break down your recap. Right. One is, and they're both very useful. One is you the GM, look at your notes, and look at what's going on in the session coming up, and you kind of do your session recap. Right. The other is really good because it helps engage your players more and lets you know what they thought was important. They say they can't hear you, Ted. Say something, Ted. They are absolutely right. They cannot hear you, and I bet I know why. Let's see. Sorry, guys. Speakers, move on. No, but for some reason, we're not getting the desktop audio for you, which someone who does live chats often would think to probably look at your soundbar and make sure it is working out. Yeah, yeah, but for some reason it is saying that you're disabled. No, that's not the speakers that I want. Let's try this one. Apply. Okay. All right, guys. Let's see if
Now,
we can. Go ahead.
am I going through? Can you hear me now?
You are. You are. Okay. They should have you now. So sorry about
All
that,
right.
folks. Um,
So, uh,
you hadn't really said
yeah.
much yet, so other than
No,
good
no,
hello and stuff. So it's just me
indeed.
It's just been me babbling and verbally vomiting on all of you fine folks this evening. So, all right. So the second thing is letting your players do the do the recap, and this kind of one, it lets them share in the work, and two, kind of lets you, the GM, know what they thought was important for the session. And they're both valid, right? Like
Hmm.
more hands make the work go easier, and also as a GM who has a player that just takes really good notes and does a recap and has a lot of fun with it because um they kind of like tell it through their characters viewpoint, right? And give so it gives it so it's a fun read. And Ted has been hogging this awesome player to himself for a long time now, years. And I finally have gotten the opportunity to run for this group, and it is a godsend. It goes right into my DM notes. I link to the Google Doc that he sends to the session that it pertains to, and before I even do my session prep for the evening, I read that first.
And we usually get, less than 48 hours from when Dr. Kurt sends those recaps to the time that we're supposed to gather. So it's not a whole lot of time. Not that, we're heavy preppers to begin with,
Yeah,
but it's still a, humorous situation to be like, yep, I don't start planning till I get that from Kurt.
yeah, it's not
Okay, well,
happening.
have at it.
It's not happening
Um,
until we hear from Kurt.
but the other perspective of recaps, because you brought up TV, and this was the direction I thought that you were angling to go to. There's always lots of things that happen in a session that might not necessarily be important in a recap for the upcoming session, but from a DM's perspective, looking at emulating TV, they tend to tell you what is happened previously that is going to be pertinent to tonight's episode. In our case, it would be for tonight's session. So even if something that might not have happened last session, players might have forgotten that, oh, you know, George the sorcerer happened to, make this connection in town 3 sessions ago. Well, we can bring that up because that's gonna, something that about that is gonna be pertained to tonight's episode. So like that is another way to look at it because it's a lot of fun, like trying to like make those little connections of like, all right, you mentioned this in the recap. Where is this coming up? Where can I little tie my little strings of, connection points for conspiracy theories?
Yeah, well, also Avram makes me think of something as well. Is that's the fact like a lot of like GM prep for myself, and I think Ted, you do this the same thing. Is like most of my GM prep for the next session is me taking notes from this session of like the things the players are doing and what goes on and what happens. Um, which is super useful because we're like we talk about we don't really do a lot of prep, but I just think our prep is different. Like our prep happens during the sessions that we're running, and we take that information and push it forward into future sessions. Now, which is perfectly fine, and then also having someone like Kurt who's taking notes and doing the recap, in conjunction with that is super helpful for us to figure out where things are going. Now, if you want to do the recap as the GM, um, not only is it helpful to say this is what happened last session, but also like maybe something that happened 5 sessions ago is finally going to come to fruition. And you want to key your players into different things that are important in the game. I think this works best though if you've been doing it since the very beginning. Even session 1 you can do this, right? If you have a good session 0, then you can recap the things that you think were important and might come up in the session 1 from session 0, and you can just keep carrying that forward. And so as you advance different plot lines, you can mix them into your recap. Now, if you haven't been doing that for a campaign, all of a sudden do it, it's going to be kind of weird, and like your players might start metagaming. That is one of the thoughts that I had. But I feel like if you start doing it from the beginning, or you start incorporating it and then kind of training your players as to what's going on here, hopefully they'll just go with it and not try and figure out like read the tea leaves per se.
Sure. But even if you start, mid campaign, it really is helpful to kind of let people know, even if you're just playing a home game, like what happened before, because all right, what if you've got, people who have very busy lives and you don't play every single week. Like, all right, the number of times that we were playing every single week, and because so much happens, I'm like, I don't remember what happened, and I give me some kind of like jumping off point. Uh, you know, and I'm like, oh yeah, that I know, and then I could do my bit. Um, so I can only imagine people whose lives are that much more difficult, or have much more stressful jobs that incorporate D&D into it, to you know they might not have the or might have the same kind of issues that I do. I don't know.
Well, and there's another thing too, where I think the recap can be helpful. Like, if your groups are anything like ours, right? We're gonna sit around and BS for a while beforehand and do a little bit of hanging out. But like if you start a recap or have one of the players start a recap, like that signals okay, the game has begun. It's time to get your funny shaped dice out and start to get your RP on, as well, right? So it can kind of be like the opening salvo into the game to let players know it's time to kind of like put the chatter aside for now and play
It
the
has
game.
begun.
It has begun. Um, so what would be your number one tip for recaps, whether DM side, player side?
So I've already tossed that out there. You key off of what are the important factors that you want to connect tonight's story to the events that have already happened. I feel like that is a strong note, and whether you bring up, oh, from 3 sessions ago, this element, or just the whole, as Robin did previously on,
Yeah.
you could just mention that, you know, oh, at some point in time, this event happened, and now there's a sequence, and you don't need to like call out specifically. You just give those fine details. Literally, this afternoon I was watching some NCIS, and there's this whole arc that is multiple sessions, long, and every session there or every episode with their previously on, they're showing different clips of this one meaningful aspect. And it might have been a 5-minute block that happened 4 episodes ago, but this part is, coming to this episode, and this part here is coming to, one further down the chain. So it's you get more and more pieces of what that conversation was, but whatever is pertaining to tonight is where you're fixated on. And your same thing could kind of go like, all right, you had a run in with a thieves guild, and maybe, you know, during the run in, you got into a fight, some items were stolen, some information was discovered. So while it's all one block of time, there's three separate events that could be linked to future encounters and thus future episodes. If that makes any sense.
It does, and I would even say too, you can kind of mix and match a little bit. Like you could have your players do the the recaps, and then you could kind of weigh in after they recap and go, "Oh, here's a couple things too that you didn't mention that might be important or that happened." However you want to do it. There's nothing wrong with that. But I would say my tip is to bribe your players, right? Like whether you offer them inspiration, XP. Um, in our games, I have no problem offering them all the XP. Uh, or maybe little trinkets that they get to use in the game. Whatever it is that will motivate them to do it and want them to all take turns doing it would be would enhance your game a ton. Because I will say one of my favorite things is Robin, I believe in the Scarlet Sisterhood, started doing the recaps, but
Mhm.
then like the other players wanted to do them as well. So they would just take turns from week to week. And I feel like I felt like maybe there was a little bit of competitiveness there, but in a friendly and a good way, and
Fully.
also it just gave you different perspectives instead of just the one character's perspective through all of it. So I found all of that like super super helpful as a GM.
Absolutely. And having watched recently some games on the channel, that I've watched, the Scarlet Sisterhood. I've watched, those bastards as we're getting ready to go to season 2 for that one. And I recently, finished rewatching our Ether Skies game, and Robin is a DM in Those Bastards, was the player in Scarlet Sisterhood, was player in Ether Skies. So like they definitely have that okay, let's do this previously on thing. And there was a time for Ether Skies where all of a sudden that became a thing that you know Robin started doing, and it was kind of cool to kind of reminisce about that.
Well, Robin is also very good at recapping, and
Mhm.
their recaps are like the most fun.
Oh, I mean, I would expect, Robin to be able to nail it because they're an author, so they're used to being able to, you know, get the most exciting parts all together.
But they might have some stiff competition with Steven. And Steven has a slight edge because he seems to remember everything.
Uh, That is true. But we've, sadly not been gaming with Steven as long as we have with Robin. So,
That's true. So Avram wants to start recording their sessions and uploading them. I think the biggest thing with that is to make sure like all your players feel the same way, all the players involved feel the same way, because it's and depending on how you're going to do it, it's not quite the same. And sometimes when you play a game that's being gets streamed later, even if it's pre-recorded, and then you have to think about like, are there stupid jokes you're going to make with your friends that maybe you don't want all of the internet to see, right? So
And
there's some considerations.
there is lots to consider. Is it just audio? Are you looking at video? If there's video, is there anything that you don't want in the shot that you have to look at? If it's just audio, like, is there anything that's been said or being said that, would not really be appropriate to just share out? Is it, you know, neutral across the board? And it's tough. And we
Yeah.
we
I
started
mean,
recording.
do you guys eat pizza while you're playing your games or snack while you're playing? That's another thing like that'll affect your audio quality and the sound. Do you really want the internet watching you shove food in your face as you're playing? Like, these are all things to take in consideration. I'm not saying it's a good idea or a bad idea, just some things that we've learned along the way.
Yeah, and that's as I said, that's the learning curve. We had to do it, and there were times that players would literally like be involved in stress eating, and they're like, all right, I need to step off camera to quickly
Yeah.
shove a slice of pizza down my throat because this combat is too intense. And that is what it is. Uh,
So
that's which is
now
wonderful.
moving away, well, not really moving away from recaps, but moving more specifically into our own recaps. We just got back from the UK, and I'm
You
really
mean D&D in a castle?
yeah, like D&D in a castle.
I I
You
threw I
were
threw the shirt on just for the chat because I knew what we were going to be talking.
yeah. So you ran a campaign, I ran a campaign. Um, we were over in the UK for 9 days. I mean, it was really more like seven because like two of them you do nothing but travel. It feels like. Um,
Yeah. And I don't know what it is about, coming back here. I have not recovered. I have been getting up, in the very much the wee hours. Uh, here like pretty much like
are you looking for different corridors in the castle to wander down, or
no, no. I mean, I just like for me like I don't know, since I got home I've been getting up like 5:30 and I'm like I can't get out of bed at 5:30 in the morning. And like I felt like really weird. I was so exhausted yesterday. Like I didn't really do all that much. Like I've been trying to rest and recuperate from travel, but like I was exhausted by like 9:30 last night. Like I'm like, what's wrong with me?
well, hopefully you slept good. So, what game did you run at D&D in a castle?
All right, so
How
I
would you recap those 6 sessions, the 24
how would
hours
I
of D&D?
recap those 6 sessions? So my game was loosely inspired by How to Train Your Dragon. So I think I called it, my Drake Riders campaign.
Mm,
So we were the players started off at seventh level. They got a bonus feat at first level that they could choose either skilled or tough, just because I knew what I had going into it. And everybody got their own Drake as a mount. In the next week or so, I'm going to be writing a a blog post to kind of like go through all of the little nuts and bolts that I put together to basically make the riding drakes. Um,
yeah.
but I basically snipped off the poisonous stinger because I was not giving, free reign with that kind of monstrosity and allowed them to make some selections for, what their Drake could do. Was it more dexterous than it was strong, so you could flip your dex or strength. It could have a breath weapon, or it could be more armored, or a couple of other things. Um, and then once you selected it, that was the choice for the campaign. Um, and the players had selected that they wanted to have the scope of the game be something related to, the drakes, the dragons that these players got to have as mounts. So kind of loosely inspired by How to Train Your Dragon 2, there was like a dragon mother. I called it the dragon brood mother. And the players started off at session one. They were presenting the yearly gift, the annual um, offering to keep the relationship with the island where the players come from strong and, continuing. So every 6 months, islanders would come and try to see if they could get a drake to come and raise. And if they were found worthy, they would take a hatchling home and begin raising it. So lots and lots of fun. Well, after 16 years of offering this yearly offering that was pretty much always the same thing, the dragon rejected it. And it totally freaked out the players. They were not really, prepared for it. So it began this whole chase of finding something else to appease the dragon brood mother. They wound up having a conversation with this really bizarre crossbreed between a hag and a harpy that kind of lived out in the middle of nowhere that was very much creepy and unsettling. She was a lot of fun to role play, and she was almost like a request of the player who, or one of the players. They go off, they travel and do some visitations to some weird islands. They come back with the offering. They give it to the dragon brood mother. She says that somebody has come in and taken some hatchlings. They found a way to subdue the bigger dragons. They then went off and did some tracking, found out where these evil people were that were taking hatchlings. They wound up, killing some pirates, coming back, delivering the dragons. Found out that the brood mother is sick. They then have to, find out how to cure the sickness. They meet some interesting people, have some more wonderful conversations, some more interesting combats, and eventually come for the final battle, where the shadow spirit of the dragon brood mother, they watch as it basically crawls out of its flesh, and they have to then fight the one behind this evil dark paladin, and at the same time, magically destroy the shadows and push the spirit back into the dragon broodmother.
Nice. I have a really important question for you, Ted.
What's that?
How many legs did the drakes have?
How many legs did the drakes have? I allowed them to describe what their things looked like. So there was some had two, some had four.
Interesting. Did this start an all-out war at your table?
It didn't, because if it was me, I would probably care, because I'm a dragon nerd. But I had everything
You
from
didn't push your
you know
glasses up on your nose and go, well,
no, no,
actually.
no, 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 actually, no, I didn't do any of that kind of stuff. I very much inspired by How to Train Your Dragon. The way it looked was entirely up to the players. So one of them was like literally like a just barely large size Falcor from um not
Never ending
Labyrinth, the
story.
other one. That's it. Thank you. Uh, from Neverending Story, I had one that was like all bright and shiny, one that was like, basically like the tuxedo, all blacks and whites. So lots and lots of variety of what these things look like.
I do believe there was a massive not unicorn manicore battle as well, because um my room was like on the other side of Ted's room in the castle where we're gaming. So like we would have to walk through his room if we were leaving or to use the restroom or whatever. So every once in a while I'd take a peek in on our way by to see what was going on there.
Yes, there was indeed a combat where there were three Manticore that were in a camp. So basically, after their after they start the hunt looking for the baby drakes, the baby dragons, um, there was a grouping of these five huts, and these five monsters, these five creatures that had wings. Two of them were the larger size wyverns that came out from WizKids from Sand and Stone, but the other three were manticores, which were clearly not uh, not drakes that would have come from the brood mother. So I had told the players, like, after the whole campaign was over, that I'm like, all right, had this been like a longer game, had we had more than 6 sessions, I still planned it the way I would do a regular game, but I inserted uh things that would become like, oh, here's a whole nother side quest that could have been done. And they made acknowledgments that, all right, manticores, we haven't seen these before, right? And I'm like, nope. So like these were, some kind of, either captured from the mainland and brought here, or they were some kind of experimental creature that was done. So they would have had a further investigation to try and figure out, where they're coming from. So that would have been, more legs of this ever expanding adventure. But I still put that in there to have something different and to basically raise their eyebrows. I had debated, like, do I want to use manticores? Do I want to use chimeras? Do I want to use a combination? And I just thought it'd be a lot easier if I just put manticores in there because they're pretty badass and those tail spikes are awesome.
The tail spikes are awesome, and I am a huge fan of manticores. So, what was the structure for you running that adventure? Because, like, basically, we ran like a mini campaign, 6 sessions, 6 4-hour sessions over 3 days. How did you structure that to kind of stay on track in case anyone else ends up like running a similar kind of game in a castle?
Sure. So I when I have a game like this, there's got to be a loose outline. So number one, the areas to explore, I limited. So my game was based on an island chain, and they weren't going to generally have access to like the larger boats that they could be able to sail. I also set time limits on numerous pieces of the adventure so that the players couldn't just hem and haw and drag their feet because there was a thing. So like when the dragon rejected the gift, it's like you got 3 days. Otherwise, if you don't return with something acceptable, the relationship is done. And from a DM's perspective, I'll pull forth the curtain. Whatever they came up with and came back with was going to be acceptable, so long as it was something that made sense. If they came back like with a rock from the shore of like, well, you didn't like the pretty shiny thing, so what about this piece of crap stone? No. But if it was something that they had gone and searched for, they used some intelligence to kind of figure out, and came back with something they they really were looking for, all right, great. That'll be justified. It was just having something. It was, that MacGuffin so that there's story. But I had three weird islands in this chain, as I call them: Crystal Island, Fire Island, and Land of the Lost. So there was one item on each of those that they could have gone and looked for, and any one of them would have worked. Or if the players came up with something interesting that they might have been able to go get on either one of those islands or one of the more normalish, that would have been acceptable as well. Um, but having that outline, having options to figure out where to go, and then being able to streamline from there of, well, what does this arc look like? So like I gave them 3 items to go get, and as they're kind of like, oh, we're doing our long rest and we're going to start this journey in the morning, the players are kind of out of game talking like, oh, we should try to go get all 3. Mentally, I'm thinking to myself, you don't have time for all of that. So like, but they did get the first one. I'm like, well, maybe we should just go deliver this one and see what she says. And if she rejects it, we'll have time to go get another one. And I'm like, all right, good, good, good. You know, they were able to deliver it and it be accepted. So,
Nice. So it's funny. I also created new rule sets for my game as well that my
hmm
players didn't use or interact with at all. So they were aware of
no,
it and they looked at it and said, "I'm not doing that." So I ran my Other Skies campaign, which is based off of, as Ted had mentioned earlier, a campaign we had run before. Now, that campaign was run in a different system, and this one was run in 5e. Well, that other system involved insanity and corruption, and basically being over any kind of caster could essentially overcharge their magic, right? And so what that allowed them to do, basically, they could get free upcasts, they could increase the DC, they could they could use stuff that after they're out of it. They had a lot of there was a lot of flexibility, but they all looked at it and said, "I don't want to risk permanent insanity and my character becoming an NPC." So they opted to not do it, which I was kind of surprised because like a lot of the players that I'm used to playing with are like, "Oh, I'm definitely going to push this to the max. I don't care if my character goes insane and dies. I want to see what I can do." Uh, so that was a bunch of work I put in that kind of got tossed to the side, which is fine. That's what part of being a dungeon master is. Um, and I, like you, I knew I needed to have a beginning and I needed to have an end. So the group had their own airship, and they one of their patrons would send them to a location looking for ships coming out of this forsaken city, and they get paid well for it. So they like this job because no one ever comes out. Well, this is the first time ever that something comes out, and they're super clever. They're high level, and they come up with like some great ideas. Like they use hallucinatory terrain to hide their ship, and so they're able to realize there's something wrong with the ship that's coming out of there. It's under piloted, and not only that, like there's something wrong with the people that are piloting it. The sailors are not quite right. So they basically, stop them. The first mate and the captain escape. They kind of they're able to get one of them, but they can't get the other one. So they bring back the body, but in the meantime, one of them had the ability to go into the ethereal plane, and when they do that, they're like, one of the things they noticed right away, like every one of the sailors that was left kind of had like a monster in the ethereal plane attached to their physical form in the real world. But also they realized like all the loot on the ship also had monsters attached to it. So like the first big loot drop, they're like, we're not touching any of this. Matter of fact, they take I believe they took the ship and kind of like rigged it up to fly on its own to send it back into the city where it came from, and basically said no, thank you. It is at that point that I ran out of all of my material that I had planned because now they had decided to go in a completely different direction than I thought they might. They figured out things way early. So their benefactor like ended up hiring them to go after the Dark Rider that got away, because that's just what I was kind of calling them. So like everything in that city was like an abomination, or an aberration monster type, and their whole thing was trying to bring back these elder gods, eldritch horrors from this other domain that got locked away. Matter of fact, you guys in your campaign actually stopped that from happening, right? The seal was broken, you guys resealed it. Well, now they're looking for another way to break the seal, and it's soon after they recapture the first mate that got away that they realize like there's something else coming, someone else coming, and they basically followed him and like he started just amassing like these strange weird creatures that followed him to a temple, which they defeat him and the monsters, but like it was the monster's blood that was needed to activate the temple. which opened a portal that brought back the ship, the Morning Hawk, which was the ship that the other party used from the Other Sky's
Yep.
first campaign, piloted by none other than Dark Bunny, which was Ted's character, and Dr. Lucy, which was Robin's character. And up until this point, they've been able to use their ship's cannons and just obliterate stuff. And they're like, this feels a little unfair. Until like the Morning Hawk came flying out of the portal and just totally scuttled their ship with their cannons. Like brought the propulsion system within 5 hit points of just being done, uh, and then flies off. Right. So I had to do a lot of improvising. So basically for them it was like trying to figure out, who these other people were that were connected to Dr. Lucy and Bunny and what they were trying to do, and then ultimately um going back to Haven, this forbidden city that everything came out of, and stopping Dr. Lucy from enacting the ritual that would break the seals and let elder beings through. So it kind of ended with them fighting Demogorgon as they're trying to shut down these pylons via a ritual, and disintegration rays. Before it was too late. I think they had like 3 rounds that they needed to like trace the sigils, and then they had to simultaneously activate the item, and they had to make checks in order to do that. But like each round, it's like Demigorgon is swiping at them. I'm like, I was just hard enough, and I had the model for him, so I was like, yeah. I thought about like making up a new monster or something. I like, nah, Demigorgon will work just fine. Uh, Prior to that, in their battle with Dr. Lucy, one of them had a scroll of Soul Cage, and I know you can't really use it this way, and I told them as much, but I was like, you know what? If you can make the Arcana check, and I forget what the DC I set, I'll allow you to use it in a way that it's not really meant to be used, and I let them Soul Cage Dr. Lucy, and I think they asked for the 5 questions, and imprisoned her in the scroll itself that the spell was on, and they've got that hanging in their ship. And I think they've got it all rigged up so no one can ask any questions anywhere near it. So they can't have a D&D movie situation with the Speak with Dead and have her get freed. But prior to that, I also had planned a awesome ship to ship combat where they could go all whole hog with their ship against another ship, and they actually got a ship upgrade so they could have something that was comparable to the Morning Hawk to fight from. They wouldn't know parts of that. After they saw what it looks like when cannons get fired back at them, they were done. They totally scuttled my whole plan to have this awesome ship to ship combat. And
Uh,
it still took some time, but it was much shorter than I anticipated.
sure. So Dr. Lucy is stuck in a scroll or a painting, if you will, and Dark Bunny had his ship disabled and
Left.
left there to fix it. But if anybody is going to be able to fix a ship, it's going to be Dark Bunny.
Yeah, it
Uh,
definitely leaves a cool opening for something, and because they were able to repair the seal at its source, where you
mhm,
guys like were able to fix it from afar, which stopped the bad stuff. I was like,
yep.
okay, you guys fixed it at its source. You've actually reset the city of Haven to before it was destroyed, before it became cursed, and basically created a new city, um, which I think they're trying to introduce democracy into. We'll see how that goes. Uh, but one of the fun things that I've been able to do with both of my D&D and Castle campaigns, like each time, like one player just added a bit from their backstory that I was like, oh, that's something really good that I can latch onto and use. Like in this case, this character was an air genasi, and they no, unfortunately, Dark Bunny is not a Aragon, which would be great. He's a kobold.
So yeah, Bunny is a kobold. And you have to kind of go and see his his backstory of where he originally came from. It's it's actually a little demoralizing that I came up with this. Is like, it's crazy. But you have to go watch episode 1 of Ether Skies in order to get that.
Yeah, and if you start with one, you might as well just watch them all.
It's only 13, it's 26 hours. It's not a critical role. Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. Actually, it was actually when I prepped for this game, I went back and rewatched it. And I was like, oh, this game was actually a lot of fun. Like the players were so much fun to run games for. And again, like I feel like Robin kind of steals the show in that just because they're willing to do crazier stuff than anybody else in the game. Like there's other
100%.
people that accidentally did crazy stuff that were like, "What do you mean that's a bad idea?" Where when Robin was doing the bad stuff, like they were doing it on purpose, with intent. Um,
There, Robin has some similar qualities to yourself because you'll do that kind of stuff as well. Uh,
all for the fun.
and in the Vast Grim game, I've fully accepted, my role there. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do all the things. I do not. I've approached my Vast Grim character as he doesn't have long to live. He is going to die, but I'm gonna take part in my destruction of the world, and I'm gonna run across that end zone or grab the
Yeah.
thing, touch the thing. I'm here for it.
So one of the things that the Air Genasi character had was like they were searching for a ring that held that held their love interest in it, and it was a genie, and also like his character wasn't from this world, and he was summoned there because basically the father of the love interest set him up to be sent away.
Okay.
Um, but it kind of backfired because that individual also ended up with the ring. So the ring started resurfacing in the game, and that character was like highly motivated to free his love interest and get them back. So it was just another thing to incorporate into the game that I had a lot of fun with. In the first D&D in a Castle campaign, one of the characters was looking for their daughter, and since they had gotten kind of sucked through a time and space type deal, I actually had the same thing happen to that character's daughter, so that they end up in the same place but at vastly different times. And Lumley Castle is haunted by Lily the Ghost. Well, I'm in that game. In the first campaign, I made Lily the Ghost as daughter, and he was able to meet her and put the ghost to rest. So able to
Nice.
tie it in. So, and thankfully, like most of my players have had like small details I could add in here and there, but only like one of them at each time had like a big set piece thing that I was like, oh, this will have like a keystone position in the campaign, because it's really
Sure.
hard if all six of your players do that.
Yeah. Now I didn't have a huge like everybody loved the game. I've actually had, most of them, reach out to me and like, all right, do you know when you're gonna be at the castle next? Would love to game with you again. Those kind of comments, which is always uplifting to hear. Um, but like I had a mother-son pair and their backstories like they were kind of working together, adventuring together, if you will, and the ranger had a whole run-in with a pirate, spent time on the pirate ship. They didn't like, something that he was doing, so they were just trying to straight up kill him. He gets away, and that's how he gets to this island chain. So he wanted to seek revenge on the pirate. Yay, I'm here for that. But he wanted to be the one to literally kill the previous captain, where his mother's character was like, I don't want him to do the murder. I want I either want her to get away or for somebody else to do it because she felt like that would be like a dark stain on, this dragonborn soul. And it was just this. whole cool back and forth, moments that when combat actually happened on this, pirate ship, like they were looking at like, all right, what do we do here? So she was not only trying to position the battlefield so that the ranger couldn't get to her or what have you. It was really really fun from a tactical perspective to see her playing this game of kind of essentially cat and mouse. Like, can I block sight with using my wyvern? Can I put some kind of spell effect to make it not possible for him to be able to fire the bow? It was just so much fun. I really enjoyed that aspect because three of the players are like, look, we just need to kill here. And the other two players are like really acting out these like story elements because it was important to their characters.
And and like that, I love that stuff because when you're getting that kind of buy-in from the players, and they're they're fully vested in the game that that's happening.
Indeed. So I want to take a quick tangent and let's see how far up this question was. Um so Chuckles the wizard wants to know how you get a homunculus. I would look to Artificer because I believe there's a gold cost in there, and I want to say it's like somewhere between 10 and 100 gold uh, for them to actually go ahead and build it. But I would look for what the mechanics say there, and that would be like a base cost to do it once you've figured out how to make one. And I would just petition your GM to say, look, I'd like to do this. You could point people here to, pretty much the 45-minute mark. And I would say there would be a research time and, make it your own personal skill challenge using, say, like Arcana, Tinker's tools. If you've got another tool set that would work in there, and then maybe like one other thing, maybe just like a straight up intelligence check or what have you, to then like figure out a recipe or not a recipe, the instructions of how to actually do it, and then it just takes maybe an hour of putting it together, with all of your components, and voila, it's not super helpful though. The artificer in our party loves to, have his homunculus deliver potions or use the help action. So it's been handy.
I could have sworn there was like a sidebar in the
For how to make
monster
one.
manual for it. Um, wait, that's what I'm looking at now, but I don't see anything. Yeah, I mean, like you said, probably using the artificer is a good template. Then also, I guess one of the things you might want to do is you could make maybe like how they have the tomes for the golems. You could
Hmm.
do something like that and make it like a quest item for them to find in order to learn how to build, build a homunculus, and make
It's
it a piece of treasure.
sure, but I mean that's it's a thing of like, all right, if your DM doesn't want you to have one, then all the wishing in the world is not going to make it happen.
Yeah,
But I mean, it's a very low power thing to have. But if your DM doesn't want yet another creature, walking around, all right, well then they're flying around. That could be a whole thing. But if your DM is okay with it, then your DM might have an idea of what it would take.
yeah. I guess step one is inform your DM you would like the thing, and see how that goes.
So we did a thing beyond our 6 episode campaign, our 6 session campaign. Uh that was pretty flippin' awesome in my opinion.
Oh, are you talking about the Jeremy Crawford D&D in a Castle experience one shot?
I- Indeed.
That might
So
not be right, but it
all
was a really long title.
It was a fabulous experience. I feel your and my table got to, be like the creme de la creme of experiences because for us, uh, we had all of our campaign. We had wrap up. Players got to narrate, their own, ending, or at least, in my campaign, I always, allow them to narrate out, what happens next with their character. And then our final session, so session 7, was both groups combined. DMs were then invited to take part, preferably being someone from the actual campaign, to then get pulled into this amazing experience. It was still a game of D&D, but as opposed to sitting at a table and moving minis around, it was almost, it was LARPing without the costumes. You still had your D&D character sheet, you still rolled dice, but you literally got to walk around the castle, interact with, physical objects that were there. In some cases, not supposed to interact with objects that were there, Doug. Uh, we'll get to that part in a moment. Um, and it was just a lot of fun. Anyone that was not part of our group was something else that was there. They were spirits. So it was an absolute blast to get to role play alongside the party after having done a full campaign with them. And Dave and I both took an NPC, and an NPC that was not in any way, shape, or form something that could be a player character, to then, role play alongside. It was just so much fun.
So the concept was basically Lumley Castle meets Ravenloft in its own little domain, right? Where the ghosts and spirits are kind of being housed in Lumley Castle, but they serve a purpose as long as they can be focused, and that is to keep. I think he was saying Cthulhu
Yeah,
at bay and locked
Cthulhu,
away.
Cthulhu, or the minions of Cthulhu, or something along those lines. That is literally resting underneath the castle.
Yes. So the premise was, you have these unquieted spirits, and there's one particular spirit in the castle that would hunt those spirits and pacify them. I think by singing to them, possibly. And that that spirit had gone missing, and the premise was we had to locate them and bring them back. So I think me and Ted both took the same approach. Like the experience was for our players more than us because we were hired to be there essentially to run
Right.
games. So I think we both took on that same role of how can we like kind of bring in like an interesting, maybe humorous type character that our players wanted to be there and still not have us do anything that would like steal the spotlight or be be like integral to solving any of the problems. Um, in that regards, like Ted said, like we played things you normally wouldn't play. He played something he made up, and I just played a revenant because in my game they had this crew, and they just decided there was just one crew member they couldn't get rid of. They hated him, and he always showed up. And he may have even there may have been several times that he's been killed. So I'm like, sounds like a revenant to me. Uh,
So,
and I
so I
played
was,
Doug.
Dave was Doug, and that was
Oh,
a
silent.
amusing thing to play. The players came up with the name. It was just an offhand comment that grew and grew and grew and grew. In my game, there were only a handful of NPCs that they interacted with, but the one that they liked the most was Tinia, the hag harpy monstrosity that, you know, pretty much half the party hated to go talk to because she was very unsettling. So like I adopted, the manner of how she walked and how she held herself, and like when she would talk to people, she would very much get in their space and just try to get the whole vibe going. And after like in another like minute or 90-second interaction, my my players would like step into the DM role of like, yeah, she's starting to creep you out. She's really unsettling you, and like, and then Jeremy would just jump in and get on top of it. So I really dug that aspect. The first combat, like this ghost like begins floating in the air, its ethereal flesh just like falls to the ground. So while the whole combat is happening, my action, I'm studying the ethereal flesh on the ground, trying to touch it, poke it, prod it. Can I take a sample of it? I don't care about the combat that's going on. The players defeat the thing, the screaming stops, the vines go away. I look up from what I'm studying and people are damaged. It's like, oh no, what happened to you? Like the ceiling? It's biting people? Nothing? Like, I didn't see it. Are you sure? Are you sure you weren't imagining it?
Yeah,
So
it
it was
was.
just
I was just gonna
it
say it
was
was
just
just
a lot of
something
fun.
extra, that was added to the castle, and it had there was it was a lot of fun, and it was gave the players a chance to interact with the other tables, and I think like all the sessions were different depending on the particular tables and what was going on in them. So that was definitely cool, and also to see Jeremy Crawford do his thing. I even tried to troll him, but I think my player got intimidated. My one player shows up to the game with the physical prop of a deck of many things. He's like, "Can I use this in your game?" I'm like, "No, you can't use that in my game." And then I found out about the Jeremy Crawford thing, so I made sure to give it to his character at the very end, knowing that he was done with my game and moving into Jeremy's game. And I was so hoping he would like have people pull cards or he would pull cards, but he didn't. I think he chickened out.
I mean, I was saddened that that didn't happen because that could have made it that much more ridiculous of a game. And like we spoke to Jeremy after the fact, and he's like, "Oh, I totally would have allowed that to happen." I'm like, "No."
I knew he would. Like I knew going in. I think I might even mention to him. I'm like, oh, and by the way, one of my players has a deck of many things. Um, just but like, come on, it's Jeremy Crawford. If Jeremy Crawford can't handle a deck of many things, nobody. Then nobody can. It can't be handled. So and
So there was,
I was just gonna
so
say.
that
I was just gonna say, real quick though, like it is such a delight to watch Jeremy Crawford run a game because he comes across as being like so mild mannered, and then
mhm,
like once the game starts, he really transforms.
sure. Yeah, it was an absolute blast to talk to. I actually was incredibly fortunate. So like we're like early on before we actually get into our campaign one, I was sitting there talking to one of the other GMs who, has been to the castle before, but I don't think they ran a full campaign. I think they were there as like a one-shot GM.
Oh, is this that time
And
when Jeremy was mentioning how nervous he was, and you gave him a little pep talk?
the other way around. So like,
Oh,
me and this other guy are, talking about, the typical, GM anxiety. And like I thought we had the room to ourselves, not that I was, saying anything that couldn't be overheard or whatnot, but like all of a sudden Jeremy just manifests in our presence and it's like, look, you guys are here at, D&D in a castle, you're going to kill it. Most GMs, myself included, go through GM anxiety. You got nothing to worry about, and then just floats out of the room, and I'm like, damn, I just got a Jeremy Crawford pep talk. This is amazing.
like an inspiration spray just came in, gave it, and left. I totally passed the
Indeed,
stealth check both times.
but we're down to our last 2 minutes, and I know there was something else that you wanted to recap.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, so like I almost forgot. So I decided to commemorate my trip to D&D in the castle with a fresh tattoo because one of the staff we met that was working at the castle and also was hired by D&D in the castle, Frankie of Pixelated Ink Studios and Dipton UK, was scoping out my tattoos and my wife's tattoos, and we started talking. And turns out she's also a tattoo artist who had recently opened up a shop, and so we started scheming when we could hook up and go get some ink. So I commemorated D&D in a castle with not one but two tattoos. One with the D&D in a castle logo with some Nerdarchy colors splashed in there, just because I like colors in my tattoos. And then also, me and my wife kind of got matching tattoos. Um, she got a red dragon, a red origami dragon to my green origami dragon, and her die was purple with black lettering and lines, and mine was the inverse of that. So we'll forever remember those experiences as they've been engraved in our flesh.
Yeah, so that was a absolutely amazing castle. I very much look forward to the next time. I know the invitation has been extended, but I don't have what dates I'm going to be going back. So it's a matter of we'll wait and see
Yes, but
when that's going to happen.
you can always sign up or pester the castle people. Be like, I want to be in Ted or Dave's game, or one of the other fabulous GMs over there. Watcher 12. The answer to your question is yes, but we're out of time. But normally, yes, you can
Yeah,
ask whatever
so
you want in these chats, and if we get to it, we do. If we don't, we don't. But your questions are always welcome.
yeah, if you get here for like the beginning of one of our chats and you got a question, you can always toss that up there and we'll get to it as soon as we can.
So currently, yeah, they have it in Lumley Castle. There's some rumors that they might try and do some other events, but their keystone events will always be the castles. I don't know if they'll branch out to other castles. The first one was in France, which I don't know. Some castle nerd might say it was actually a Lord's Manor, fortified manor, but it was close enough for an American. This American anyway. And then they also did Langley Castle back in 2019 as well. They almost did Caver's Wall, but it was seized by the bankers, the most evil things on the planet. And apparently worse than any Eldritch Horror because they seized the castle and would not let it go.
They seized the
But
castle that we were supposed to be going to.
yeah, but currently it is at Lumley, and Lumley is a fantastic site. We really enjoyed it, and really feel like they've like kicked it up a notch every time, and we've got some great memories from there. So definitely check it out. I would visit their website from time to time and their social media, even if you can't go, just to see the cool things that are going on.
Yeah,
Parts.
we usually do this a lot earlier. If you look around here, you can certainly see that, we're powered by Easy Roller Dice. So you can always go and give those fine folks some love. They got some cool new dice that have just recently dropped. I don't have it in front of me exactly what they're called, but I'm certain they're going to be, front paging it. I know it's in some of their socials, they've been sharing it out. But Easy Roller Dice has got awesome stuff. You should certainly check them out.
And there's a promo code in the description below for 25% off your first order. So until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.